Good morning. Um, so today I am going to talk about time travel, or more specifically, three rules of time travel, or three rules as I see them. It's morning time here. You can see the sun's coming through the window, so I got these weird little line effects, like a time portal might be opening out there somewhere. It's not. That's just coincidence. So how cool would that be? So basically, I do some amateur writing. I look at time travel from time to time. Naturally, it occurs in books and movies all the time. I just got curious, what are some good ways of time travel without a paradox, which is really, really hard. I mean, I don't think there is a movie out there which does not have one paradox in it about time travel. But we're willing to overlook the minor paradoxes as long as we get a good movie. A, a good story outweighs a few minor problems. However, when you have major paradoxes, then we get into bad stories, bad movies. And that's actually going to be my next video, is going to be talking about some movies and paradoxes. But for now, I just want to talk about my three general rules on time travel. People may agree or disagree with these. Um, if you disagree, you're wrong. But that's just my opinion. So the big thing with time travel is causality. And it's just the idea of, by altering time, I have changed my reasons for traveling in time, and therefore I won't travel in time. And, can we do anything without altering time which doesn't affect our ability to travel in time, and questions like that. And so that is my first rule of time travel, is you cannot do anything that will prevent you from traveling in time. That's a major causality argument. So taking away my reason for traveling in time is a causality argument. Preventing my birth is a causality argument. If I travel back in time and kill my great-great-grandfather, then I will never be born, so I can never travel back in time and kill my great-great-grandfather. And so this is a very absolute. It will affect any action I take. So rule number 2 is you cannot purposefully change time. So I want to go back in time and I want to kill baby Hitler so he never grows up and starts World War II. Although World War II probably would have happened without Hitler, it just would have taken a different line, and we might have looked at it differently and said this is not as bad as it was, just because different leaders would have been involved and they would have been making different policy choices. But I digress. So I travel back in time, I kill baby Hitler. Hitler doesn't grow up to become this awful person. He is no longer in the history books. So now I don't know that I should travel back in time and kill baby Hitler. And so that's a causality argument. But I said, rule 2 is you can't purposefully change time. So I can go back in time and I want to take a taxi downtown. So I call the taxi company and it comes and picks me up and it goes downtown. Well, now this taxi is taking me downtown and it can't take the guy who it normally would have taken somewhere. So I have affected time, basically. This guy's got to wait 5 minutes and he's late for his meeting, and that's got effects that are going to go into play. And it will change time, as long as it doesn't come back and affect my ability to travel in time in some way. So I take this guy's taxi. He was on a way to a meeting which he was going to get financing to build the microchip that I need for my time machine. And so now by taking his taxi, he does not produce his microchips. I cannot build my time machine. I cannot travel back in time again. So this sort of goes back, the first rule where you cannot prevent yourself from traveling in time sort of supersedes the second rule, because the second rule will allow for accidental changes in time as long as they don't affect my ability to travel in time. You know, the second rule, or the first rule, is an absolute, which prevents even accidental changes. The second rule allows for accidental changes as long as they don't come back to affect my ability. So, I can create a small war on the other side of the world using the second rule, as long as that small world war doesn't come back and somehow affect my ability to change travel in time. And as long as I'm not doing it on purpose. I can accidentally start a war somewhere, but I can't accidentally do anything which is going to stop me from traveling in time. So first rule is very absolute. I cannot do anything on purpose or by accident to change time or to change my ability to travel in time. The second rule is a little more lenient, a little more leeway to change things, as long as the changes aren't going to break the first rule. That's why I put the rules in that order. Third rule is you cannot become your own parent, or you cannot become your own ancestor. This is more philosophical. Basically, our concept of time is linear. So I travel in time. There have been attempts to write things with creatures who don't see time linearly. They can sort of see all points of time at the same time and stuff like that. They work. I mean, seeing people play around with the idea is sort of interesting, but most works of fiction which go into this don't go into detail because it's very hard to do without raising issues that we can't comprehend, because we are linear creatures. We see time linearly. It's very hard for us to picture it non-linearly. It's even harder to write a plot which will make sense to the masses who we are trying to entertain with our stuff, where they would be able to understand it, And so we play around with the concept, but it's really don't go into detail on it. Trying to think of a good example. The Kurt Vonnegut had the Tralfamadorians, I think they were called. They were creatures who could see every point in time. So if they looked at you, they could see you from birth to death, basically, and you were, from their point of view, you were the strange creature with multiple limbs, multiple heads, multiple whatevers, because they're seeing every point of your life at the same time. They were more of a philosophical working point than they were a plot device. I mean, they appeared, they talked to people, they raised the issue of, what are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your future? And they didn't interact too much. The plot didn't follow them through time. It didn't, they could affect people's perceptive of time, but not so much that the entire plot of a book relied on it. It was, like I said, more of a philosophical thing. Get to think about the future, get to think about the past, think about our place in time, but not follow through on it to the point of someone actually traveling in time. Although I think Billy Pilgrim, I think the guy's name was, became unstuck in time, but even that wasn't a large plot point. He could sort of see into the past and the future a little, but he wasn't actively traveling in through time as a plot point in the book. So, basically our main time travel things There are four ways that we go about it, and all of them are dealing with linear time, basically. First is I have my time machine. It makes me disappear from here and reappear in another place in time. So basically, we have a straight timeline, or a curved line, if you will, because most time travel, the line has to be a little curved. Or if we're going to change time, then the timeline can curve. And all I'm doing is disappearing from one point of the line and reappearing on another point of the line. Then we have stuff like H.G. Wells' Time Machine, where you're actually moving along the line. So when he got in his time machine, he could see time around him speeding up or slowing down. He could actually control how fast he moved through time. And so he was moving along the timeline, as it were, but it was still linear time. He was moving forward, backwards. He didn't go too deeply into changing time. In fact, he saw the great catastrophe, which was going to destroy the world and lead to the rise of the Morlocks and the Eloi, and he didn't actually see what caused it. He sort of, from his perspective, he was moving along slowly. He could see what was happening around him. He actually sped through that part of it. So he didn't try to watch it. He couldn't watch it because, again, his machine didn't travel through space. It only traveled through time. So all he would be able to see would be what was happening within the latitude and longitude of his lab. And so he would see a very small snippet of what was happening. He would have to stop the time machine and get out and wander around and explore in order to see what was really causing these events to take place. And he never did that. Trying to do that probably would have killed him, because he would have been out among the great catastrophe. And so Wells never had him try to figure it out. And whether that was on purpose or not, Wells made a good choice when he did that. The third point of view, time, is like, as we're traveling through time, we are like, our timeline is breaking off and looping back around and reattaching to the main timeline somewhere else. So time is linear, but we can create offshoots of it. And that's sort of, again, a lot of places don't go into detail on stuff like that, but a lot of fiction will, someone might be trying to explain time. They'll have a little linear chart and they will draw, an arrow going from the future back to the past to represent them traveling in time. So it's really more along the lines of, we disappear here and reappear there, but for the sake of trying to explain it to their fellow characters, they draw it in as if there are little side branches going off from our main timeline. But again, these side branches, it's not like I can stop mid-side branch and do something. I have to get back to the main timeline before I can start interacting with stuff. And then the fourth one is sort of the idea of parallel universes. And if you travel in time and you change history, you're just creating a new universe. And that's still linear in the sense of, I'm not really traveling along my timeline. I'm just hopping off my timeline and getting onto another timeline. So again, I can change history, but I'm not really changing history, because my old history is still happening and I'm just going to another universe. And so it's really just, it becomes less of a time travel story and more of a randomly looking for the universe which matches my ideals. And so, again, I've mentioned in an earlier video that I don't like parallel universes, and that's one of the reasons, is because people try to justify things with parallel universes, and it really comes down to randomly looking for the universe which matches my ideals rather than my actually doing anything special. So those are my 3 rules of time travel. Just to get back to it, you cannot prevent yourself from traveling from time. You cannot purposely change other aspects of history, and you cannot become your own ancestor. Because again, I didn't get into that. Basically, instead of linear time, you're creating this little circle of time where you're existing outside of normal time. I go back, I become my own ancestor. Well, now I don't have a ancestor who lived thousands of years ago like everyone else does, or like I did before I traveled in time. And so that shouldn't happen. So those are my 3 rules. As I said, I'm going to make another video almost immediately discussing some movies and how how they play around with these rules, and more specifically how some movies just completely break them and become bad time travel movies. But that's all for now, because I don't want this video to be too long. So have a good day. Despite time travel, we don't like long videos. And have a good day.